The Nvidia control panel is dead. Rest in peace to one of the longest living PC software utilities. In the latest GeForce Game Ready driver version 610.47, Nvidia have officially retired the control panel and will no longer provide it as part of fresh driver installations in either the Game Ready or Studio driver branch. Nvidia say that with the introduction of their most recent Nvidia app updates, all actively supported control panel features are available in the app through a newer and more modern interface. And Nvidia, well, they aren't really lying here. The app has gone from a pretty basic tool when it first debuted at the start of 2024 to a fully fledged replacement for the control panel. The first version that we looked at only supported driver updates and a subset of graphics settings. Today, all graphics options are now included in the app, along with all the display settings, color settings, video settings, and other controls that you'd previously have had to use the control panel for. There's no real reason to keep the control panel around, as it just duplicates everything offered in the app, which is why Nvidia are finally retiring it. What's crazy about the control panel is that Nvidia have been using the current variation of it since 2006. Features have been added over time, of course, but the basic interface has remained the same for the best part of 20 years. It does look incredibly outdated today as a result, though I admire the extreme longevity of this utility. I think anyone that's been a GeForce owner over the past 20 years would have fond memories of configuring stuff in the control panel, and for long-time users, there is an element of muscle memory navigating through its menus. The control panel, though, does have many issues for a piece of software in 2026. My main issue with it is that it was incredibly slow to use. It took ages to launch, changing between pages inside the control panel took ages, and there was a noticeable lag anytime you go to modify a setting. The Nvidia app, in contrast, is much faster, both in terms of loading and navigation, and Nvidia have been able to maintain that as they build out the features in the app. The other problem with the control panel and the previous way Nvidia offered their software was introduced in 2013 with the launch of GeForce Experience. This was a separate utility to the control panel that started adding in game-specific controls and support for driver updates. This would come to be the home of Nvidia's popular Shadowplay video capture utility later that year. But when the GeForce Experience launched, it fractured Nvidia's software in two. Hardware controls for things like display resolution were found in the control panel, but game features and Shadowplay were in GeForce Experience. That wasn't a great experience for new users, as the two interfaces were very different and game settings were actually split between the utilities. Overrides for things like VSync were in the control panel, but game setting optimizations were in GeForce Experience. Things got worse in 2016 when Nvidia made their most controversial move yet, forcing an account login to use GeForce Experience version 3.0. Gamers widely criticized this move as it was completely unnecessary for a utility that ultimately just provided driver updates, setting optimizations, and some overlay features. Logging in gave you nothing in return, and this remained an issue right up until the launch of the app in 2024. The Nvidia app unified everything into one utility, so you no longer need to go hunting for features in the control panel and GeForce Experience. It removed the login requirement, which is now optional, it's much faster to use, and the interface is more modern. I know some people love the design and navigation of the original control panel, but personally the app is far better to navigate. Instead of having similar types of settings split between multiple slow pages, the app consolidates settings into sensible categories, which makes things easier to find. It looks better and it runs better on modern hardware, and it's now feature complete. Not to mention the included overlay has been overhauled with navigation and speed improvements. Over time, the Nvidia app has also become the only place to access some features. If you want to use DLSS overrides, AV1 video recording, or RTX HDR, some of the newer additions Nvidia has made to their driver software suite, you can only adjust or enable those things in the app. My recent video goes over how to use the Nvidia app and the best settings to modify it in your setup. As the control panel is put to rest, it's good to know that its successor isn't really missing anything. It also won't be deleted immediately on existing systems. Nvidia say that if the control panel is already installed on your PC, the latest driver will not remove it, and it will remain indefinitely unless you perform a clean installation. If you really want to use the control panel, Nvidia will continue to offer a version through the Microsoft Store, though it won't receive any updates or fixes from this point. The latest 610.47 drivers from Nvidia include game-ready support for 007 First Light, which brings me to my next topic, the weird implementation of technology in this game. Unfortunately, we did not get early access to this title, so we couldn't perform extensive benchmarks, but luckily, a bunch of other trusted outlets did, like Computerbase, Tech Power Up, and Daniel Owen. Reading through and watching their testing, a couple of interesting things took my eye. The first surrounded upscaling integrations. Developers IO Interactive have incorrectly integrated AMD's FSR upscaling 3.1.5 technology, which prevents driver upgrades to FSR 4.1. Essentially, according to the testing from Computerbase, the developers have integrated FSR 3.1.5 directly into the game code, rather than utilizing a FidelityFX DLL file. AMD's driver upgrade feature, which takes FSR 3.1.5 integrations and converts them into FSR 4.1, relies on the DLL to perform this upgrade. When FSR is integrated into the game directly in this way with no DLL file, the driver cannot upgrade the upscaling version. This means Radeon gamers playing 007 First Light are stuck using FSR 3.1, which is significantly worse than FSR 4.1, though some have had success using OptiScaler to upgrade DLSS into FSR 4.1. It's also an unsupported integration. AMD's FSR 3.1 integration guide clearly states that a pre-built FidelityFX API DLL integration is the only supported method with FSR 3.1, and this also applies to FSR 4.1, which IO Interactive could have integrated as well, given it's now available via the latest SDK. Basically, this is entirely IO Interactive's fault. Now, there have been some accusations on places like Reddit that because 007 First Light is an Nvidia-sponsored title, that this incorrect FSR implementation has been done on purpose to hurt Radeon. It's definitely a bit suspicious, but seems unlikely given other recent Nvidia-sponsored titles support FSR 4.1 just fine. The other factor supporting this is that even DLSS upscaling itself doesn't work that well in the game, according to various benchmarks I've seen. Computerbase and Tech Power Up both claim that DLSS quality only provides a small performance uplift, 10% or even less in some tests. You'd think if the developers were really going all out to ensure that Nvidia technology is the only properly supported tech, that they'd make DLSS upscaling actually work well. In addition to issues with FSR upscaling, this is a game where frame generation is only supported on Nvidia GPUs with no support at all for FSR frame generation. Intel GPU owners are left out entirely as well with no XeSS support at all. In addition, Computerbase say that the native TAA implementation looks bad, suggesting IO Interactive have stuffed up their TAA implementation on PC. It sounds like 007 First Light needs some patches to address a few issues with the PC version and fix the FSR implementation. In some respects, this game seems a bit rushed out the door from a technical standpoint, as ray tracing is also not found in the launch version that's coming via a patch at a later date, despite being a heavily advertised edition. With all of that said, reviews for the game are extremely positive, so despite concerns over technical aspects on PC, it sounds like IO Interactive have nailed the gameplay and story. AMD are preparing to release the Ryzen 7 7700X3D according to recent leaks. This rumor first appeared via one of those leakers on Twitter and has since been strengthened by CPU-Z adding support for this model. According to this information, the 7700X3D will be an 8-core, 16-thread model with 96 meg of L3 cache, clocked at up to 4.5 GHz. This gives it the same core configuration and L3 cache capacity as the Ryzen 7 7800X3D, but with a lower clock speed. The 7800X3D is clocked at up to 5 GHz with a 4.2 GHz base frequency. There are lots of AM5 X3D models on the market in both the Zen 4 and Zen 5 families. There are already two 6-core models, the 7600X3D and 7500X3D, so it would make sense that there would be two 8-core models as well, at least eventually. With a 10% lower clock speed though, it would have to be appropriately priced to make any sense in the current market. The 7800X3D has regularly been available for $380 US over the last few months, so the 7700X3D would need to be priced no more than, say, $340 US. The 7600X3D is available for $200 at Micro Center on sale right now, with a typical price slightly under $300. So why would AMD release yet another Zen 4 X3D model? Well, the simple reason would be binning. Any CCDs with 8 working cores are able to be put into either the 7950 XD or the 7800 XD going on AMD's current lineup, which have a max core frequency of 5.7 and 5.0 GHz respectively. If some CCDs can't hit those clocks at decent power levels but can hit 4.5 GHz, it would make sense to release a new model at a lower price to get rid of those binned CCDs. But it may not be a part in massive amounts of supply, as often these cut-down models are released in limited quantities or only to specific retailers. We're not sure what will happen with the 7700 X3D, but hopefully it does get released and it ends up the most affordable 8-core X3D model on AM5. Rocket League is moving to Unreal Engine 6. This was teased during the Rocket League Championship Series 2026 Paris Major, with a new trailer showing upgraded graphics for the game. Things like better grass quality, shinier cars, better reflections, that sort of thing. No technical details were revealed or really anything other than the Unreal Engine 6 logo. This is one of those stories I see that I just really struggle to understand. Firstly, why on earth would Rocket League, of all games, be the first ever game teased to use Unreal Engine 6? It's not a title that requires high-end visuals to enjoy. It's been a smash success despite using Unreal Engine 3. Now, I know Epic Games own the developer of Rocket League, Psyonix, and have done since 2019. Naturally, Epic Games would want their titles to use the latest version of their engine. But why this particular game? Unreal Engine 5, for example, was revealed with a bespoke demo running on a PlayStation 5 showing breathtaking visuals. Secondly, does Rocket League actually need a graphics upgrade at all? Like, why transition this title to Unreal Engine 6 in the first place? I actually think it looks pretty good for an arcade style of game, and while, yeah, I guess it'd be nice to see a bit more grass detail, it's just not like I was sitting here going, geez, the reason I don't want to play Rocket League right now is the graphics. Then, of course, is the question of performance. Rocket League, currently at least, runs on basically anything and scales super well to a wide variety of hardware. It would be devastating to lose that through a massive engine upgrade and overhaul that really only brings better graphics. However, Epic Games do use Fortnite as a platform to debut the latest versions of Unreal Engine, adding better graphics features over time. Despite this, they've still managed to keep performance high in certain modes, and the game remains playable across loads of systems at super high frame rates. Hopefully, under Epic's guidance, the same can be done with Rocket League. Lastly, in the last couple of weeks, I've seen announcements for native 1000Hz gaming monitors. Always got to slip some monitor news into here. LG have announced the Ultra Gear 25G 590B, and AOC have announced the Agon Pro AGP 257 FT, both of which use a new 24.5-inch 1920 by 1080 panel that hits 1000Hz without the use of dual mode. Previously, 1000Hz has been achievable through a 1440p panel with a 720p dual mode. I'm currently testing one of those right now. You'll see that on Monitors Unboxed soon. But this new monitor does so at a native 1080p. We know the AOC model is using a new panel from BOE because the monitor was announced at a BOE event. They claim it has a 0.2 millisecond grey-to-grey response time, black frame insertion support, wide viewing angles, and so on. AOC are also using circular polarization tech, which is supposed to reduce eye strain. With the LG model, we don't know for sure that it's using the BOE panel, but I suspect it is. They claim it's an IPS panel, but provide fewer details, though they do list Motion Blur Reduction Pro Tech, which appears to be their version of black frame insertion based on their description. Neither of these monitors has a firm price or release date. LG claim their version will be available in select markets at some point in the second half of this year. Whether these will actually be worth buying is another question, given I do have some question marks over whether LCD tech can actually support a 1000Hz refresh rate properly. There's also the obvious comparison to OLED, especially now that OLEDs are pushing past 500Hz with much faster response times. So we'll have to wait and see how those particular monitors perform. Anyway, that's it for this News Corner episode. I just recently covered the Nvidia app, so I thought, you know what, I should probably cover the death of the Nvidia control panel as well. That news did come out of the blue, though I guess it has been coming for some time, given that there hasn't really been too many upgrades to the control panel in quite a while now. But yeah, RIP to that. If you do want to support Hardware Unboxed, we've got Patreon. Links to those in the description below. If you sign up, you get access to things like our Discord community, monthly live streams, and BTS content. But anyway, apart from that, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.